Good morning, guys. Automotive Inquiries here. So, spent a good chunk of the morning out at a dealership looking at a Chevy Silverado HD with the 6.6 liter V8 gas. And, you can't beat a better morning than that when you're out driving a new Chevy pickup or a new pickup in general. That being said, we're getting real close to the 2,500 mark on subscribers. So if you could do me a favor, go down there and hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm posting new content, and just give me a like. It does help my channel out quite a bit. Now, if you watch my other videos, my wife said that if I can get up to the 2,500, then I can potentially purchase a truck and trade in her car. And that way I can use both trucks to tow our fifth wheel and do kind of like a real world comparison. Everybody else, they get these trucks, I don't know where they get them from. They have a hookup at a dealership and use them for a day or whatever, beat them up and down a hill once or twice and then call it good. Well, I want to put, a real truck into use for me indefinitely. And the new gassers just really spiked my interest. Obviously, you guys have seen my Godzilla videos and where I'm at with that. And one of the biggest things that people want to put against the Godzilla is GM's new 6.6 gas. Well, it's new in 20, and so was the Godzilla new in 20. And that's kind of how manufacturers have always rolled. They, tit for tat, they go one for another, trying to up each other. And I do like the look of the Chevy Silverado a lot. Better than my Ford? No, but equally as much. They say a lot of people say that Chevy has the face only a mother could love. Well, I actually like it, but I also like the Chevy Avalanche and stuff. I like unique looking trucks. Now for 24, it's coming with a facelift, and it's also going to get a new interior and a new 10-speed Allison to the gas, not new to Chevy, but just new to the gas because it's had the old 6-speed for quite a while. So want to get out there and take a look at that. Now, that being said, I'm going to tell you towards the end of this video some of the concerns I have with the 6.6 gas. The more I dive into this, the more I talk to mechanics, the more I talk to everybody, because everybody says, well, my Chevy is bulletproof and your Ford's going to blow lifters and transmissions and everything like that. Well, the 7.3 Godzilla has the same transmission as the 6.7 Powerstroke, the 10-speed torque shift. So Ford decided they were going to do that and just say, we're going to give you the same HD transmission no matter what engine you get. And I believe that's going to hold true also with the 6.8 liter V8 that's coming out on the 23 Fords. Now, that being said, I have some reservations about the 6.6 Chevy gas. One of the biggest ones is something that I just find that odd, but we're going to delve into that. So, first things first. As we know, the 6.6 liter V8 replaced that aging 6.0 liter. That bad boy had been around for about 20 years. And that thing, did good. I mean, it was a pretty solid motor, especially once it settled into its own. The thing that came out, though, is when they brought out this new LT or L8T V8 in 20, it only came out with 401 horsepower and 464 pounds of torque. Well, if we go and look at all the other trucks out there, the Godzilla right now is putting out 430 and 475. Now that's 22 and earlier specs. The 23 is going to get a bump by 10 on each. So that's a big difference in horsepower. In addition to that, you got the little 6.8, I call it the Babyzilla, that's coming out in 23, and it's got 405 horsepower, which is a little bit more, and just a smidge less torque at 445. So really the 6.8 is more comparable to the 6.6, and I think the 6.6 and 6.8 Ford is also more comparable to the 6.4 Hemi. The 6.4 Hemi has 410 horsepower and 429 pounds of torque. So if I had to say right now, what is the fastest one of these out there? Rear end for rear end. So if you went and put them very comparable, I would say probably the fastest is the Hemi. We all know that Dodge does performance, and not that Ford doesn't, but I mean that 6.4 Hemi is a speed demon and is powerful, and it's quick even in the Power Wagon. But when it comes to matters of seconds, we're only talking a little bit more than the Godzilla. So I know when people are like, well, my diesel's faster than this and I can go fast and up the hill and I can take off the line. Listen, that's great and all. And I could really appreciate the fact these trucks have the horsepower, can get up and get going. But that being said, the GM gasser is the slowest of the bunch, but it's an HG truck, so I'm not expecting it to win any races. But it is somewhat lethargic, and this is just truck to truck, not towing or anything like that. Now, when you tack on these 16,000 pounds worth of towing that the GM truck's rated at, it's kind of a bummer because you would want it to have more juice, especially if you're not towing. Now, when you're towing, you're going to lose, a lot of that speed demon part of it. But at the end of the day, it is one of the slowest. Now, when 24 comes around, they're not bumping horsepower, they're not bumping torque. That 10 speed is going to make it a smoother and linear thing. Now, there's different methods of thought. Everybody's saying, well, I wouldn't get the 10 speed because I don't need all those extra gears. Listen, again, that's just the direction it's going. And I won't argue what is going to be better, because we have 10 speeds that work just fine. There's 6 speeds that work just fine. Ram is an 8 speed. It's all over the place, and that would be to each your own on what you dig the most. I don't think that putting an Allison transmission behind anything is a bad idea. I think it's great, so I will applaud GM on that one. So when we start thinking about how the construction of the 6.6 L8T motor, it's very well built. It's very simple. It's a push rod engine. It's cast iron block, thank goodness. Most of the earlier 6 liters and everything like that, 6.2s and everything like that have all been not a cast iron block, and I can appreciate that. And so is the Godzilla, and that right there is going to give you that the ability to put low end torque in there and then work that motor all day, and then go home and then park it for the night and get up and just work it again, which is super nice. It has the the forged crank and the connecting rods, everything like that. I mean, we're right on par here and everything like that. So that's also really nice, because when you get that kind of construction into the motor, you can also get that torque band and everything at a lower RPM, which is good, because in the old days the 6 liter would wrap out pretty hard. And then the Godzilla itself, I have a pretty good power band with that 10 speed, pretty much at 1500 RPM. It feels like it's pretty linear, but that is going to be a big help, a step up over the 6 liter. And then in addition to that, you can also run this motor on 85 or better fuel. I would always recommend just running 87 or higher, but you can run 85 on it, which is good. Another point of contention is a lot of people like that the Chevy has, direct injection. Okay, now that's a really good thing. Usually it's a good thing because it helps fuel economy, versus the port injection that the Godzilla has. Now, the Godzilla having port injection, the fuel is basically being dumped in there and splashed, and it basically, cleans the intake manifold and everything like that. Now, when you have your direct injection, that's actually in the combustion chamber, which with all the EGR stuff and everything that's on these engines and stuff like that, it can recirculate and kind of carbon that up. So, not a bad thing, but what from my experience, what I've seen is it doesn't necessarily make better fuel economy. And that might be some of the 6 speeds hindrance on this motor, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to help with that. And I wouldn't necessarily see that, because I've only got about 12 miles a gallon with the that big 6.6 gas every time I drove it. And the one this morning was no exception. It was about 9.8 on the 20-mile loop. So over time they'll break in, and hopefully they'll get a little bit better. And fuel economy is subjective to whoever's driving it. And last but not least, again, an HD truck, you're not necessarily getting this bad boy for fuel economy. So one of the great things also about this motor is most of these manufacturers, and Ram does this on their 6.4, is they add active fuel management. Now, I'm not ever been a huge fan of that, especially on the Hemis, and I like to be able to turn that actually off. But GM didn't put that on this motor, which I think is really good. And what that does is it basically just deactivates some of the cylinders and gives you a little bit better fuel economy. And I think that across the board, most people are going to be okay that that's not on there. So then you might think, okay, well, how much of this engine carries over with the 6.6 Duramax? Well, actually not a lot. They're not even the same size. Even though they're 6.6, there's decimal points that kind of weed out there, and GM rounds up and rounds down. But nonetheless, the 6.6 gas is a 401 cubic inch, and we're talking 1 cubic inch, but that's enough to change a lot of stuff. And then the other, the diesel is actually a 402 cubic inch. The construction of the motor is different. The heads are going to be different. Obviously, the fuel systems are different. And the pistons, the rings, the crank, everything's going to be different. So whether or not there's a little ECM piece or a relay or a module or a wiring harness that kind of adapts over to the gas motor, the simple answer is there's no identical part process, and this is not just a fuel that's been switched over from a diesel to a gas. And, you know, at the end of the day, they carry almost zero parts over from each other. So they are two different motors. So that should clear up some of those questions. Now, that being said, comparing a diesel to a gas, we're kind of in that realm again where a lot of people would sit back and say, man, you can't compare a gas to a diesel. And you're right. I mean, those are going to be two completely different animals, and each one has its own place. But there's a reason why, you know, Ford and Chevy have, you know, put so much money into making these two new gas motors. And I think Ram's probably at some point going to beef up the 6.4 even more. And it's because at the end of the day, there's a whole consumer market that is not used to having diesels. And the complexity of diesels these days, the emissions, the DEF, all the maintenance, the fuel cost, everything like that, that is a huge thing now for a lot of people. And again, people have blasted me on here because they don't think I've ever had a diesel before. I've had every diesel that you could think of pretty much in a pickup since 1988. And I will say that I will love diesels till the day I die. However, having had enough diesels, had enough you know, emissions issues and stuff like that, and these are costly issues that unless you have a very nice scan tool to get on there and figure out what these codes that they're throwing are and how you can even potentially rectify them, I mean, you're talking major money. And now we're getting to the point where they're actually outmoding parts. So, you know, if you get a knock sensor on an LML and you need to find that part is so expensive that the general consumer that's never had a diesel before, coming from a half-ton or even an SUV that's been towing, now to a diesel, that's going to be a whole culture shock to them. And to be honest with you, a lot of times the unit that they were towing really isn't in demand of a diesel, and so you know you can get away with stepping up to a HD truck with a gas motor and be like, wow, this is a great thing and it fits our needs really well. Now again, even with the 23 specs and Ford pushing those number up in the 20s pretty good with the gasser, diesel's always going to have its place. Okay, yes, I know there's no gasoline semis. Okay, I get that, everybody. Okay, I've had diesel. I'm a truck driver right now, so I mean, again, you don't have to sell me on the reason why there's diesels. Okay, and diesels, again, once you get up in those higher ranges and everything like that, and you need that extra exhaust brake, engine braking, you know, duh, it's going to make sense. But for the average consumer wanting to save 10 G's, they already know they got to step up from their Subaru Outback or their Jeep that they've been towing with, and all of a sudden now they don't need a half ton, they need a 3/4 ton, and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to spend $100 grand. Well, they can save money going with the gas. All right. So again, that's why, as far as I'm concerned, the gas options are a great different direction for the average consumer. I'm enjoying it so much that I love not having all the DEF and, you know, boxes of DEF and the extra oil and everything around the garage. So I'm actually really enjoying that. I enjoy my Godzilla, and I'm looking forward to getting one of these other HD trucks in here to put against it. Now, that being said, a lot of people now bang the Godzilla lifter and valve failure, everything like that, okay? Chevy's running through the same thing, okay, with their 5.3 liter, and this is going to this 5.3 talk is going to twist into the 6.6 gas here in just a second. But they had the same issues because they had the, you know, the active fuel management and everything like that, but they had lifters, failures, and it just became a huge mess. Now, a lot of that had to do with, you know, oil usage and stuff like that. But when people say, well, the Ford's the only one that's ever had it, not necessarily. You can always have that with any of them. Now, here's where this kind of plays into the 6.6. And this is the biggest concern I have with buying one of these motors, okay? So if you made it this far in this video, this behooves you to do it, because I'm actually mind blown. I had heard about this. Some guys had been commenting when they were talking about they traded their 6.6 gassers and for back either a Duramax or even going with the Godzilla was oil consumption. Can you believe it or not? This brand new motor is having the same issues that Chevy just got done in a lawsuit for on their other motors for excessive oil consumption. Now, although the new 5.3s have now rectified that issue, this class action lawsuit, GM just built a brand new motor, and this is what they're selling to us. And here it is. I'm going to put a link in my my video itself, so you guys can go check this out. There is a fancy page to record your oil consumption and everything like that. They've known about this. This was put out in May because they were having issues with it, and you'll see all on here that it covers it. And literally down here you can see that, and people are. And to me, my '63 Chevy maybe burnt a quart of oil every, you know, a couple thousand miles, and that thing ran like an old turd. This thing right here, so the accepted rate of oil consumption for the gasoline engine with an 8,600 pound GVW is 1 quart for every 100 gallons. Okay, so the oil change interval on this for normal service is 7,500 miles. And if your truck, say, gets 13 miles a gallon, that means you're using, 1,300 miles, you're putting a quart of oil in here. So in theory, by the time you got to your oil change, you wouldn't even have any oil that was originally in there. Hypothetically, you would just be dumping oil on top of oil. And I think that's crazy. And I've seen some of these new trucks smoke when they are, blow a big old cloud of black smoke out. And I think that's just really, really troubling, because that GM is actually saying that this is acceptable. As long as it's in warranty, it's acceptable to do that. After you're out of warranty, though, good luck. Make sure you check your oil out. But they're basically saying the only fix to this is it's normal to burn it, and that you should just add oil, and then it's all good. And that's about it. And then they tell you how to check your oil, just in case you haven't figured that out. Make sure you're on a level surface and everything. They're basically covering themselves, but there is no fix. If you go to page 2 of this, it actually talks about towing and heavy usage, where it says towing a trailer or hauling additional weight will also increase oil consumption. All right, so to me it's just mind blowing. That's going to be at the end of this video. You want to check it out for yourself, because for me, I'm blown away. I'd heard about dudes talking about oil consumption, and for me, I have not experienced that, even in some of the Subarus, where they say it's going to burn a little bit of oil, in 4,000 or 5,000 miles, a quart every 100 gallons. Now, mind you, if you're getting 7 or 6 miles a gallon because you're towing, you're going to get even more oil consumption. And that is a huge red flag to me, because again, they never were able to fix the issue on the 5.3s in the the early 2010s and up. They weren't able to fix the issue, and so people were suing because that later became issues with the rest of the motor and the components within it. So to me, that is a monster red flag. And most people say, I don't know anybody that I've ever met would be like, well, that seems normal on a brand new truck to burn oil a quart every 100 gallons or whatever, because now you got to keep oil with you, if you're going to be using this for a hot shot business or whatnot. All right, because I know it's coming. A lot of you are going to say, listen, Jeremy, oil consumption is normal and it's not catastrophic. You're right. It is not catastrophic as long as you don't run it out. So check your oil often if you're going to get one of these 6.6 liters, and that'll be good. All right. Now, one of the next issues is the exhaust manifold gaskets leaking. Now, this is typically a Hemi thing. When you hear a Ram truck come up and it's just slapping tap, 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 and you're like, okay, that's weird. That almost sounds like a component of the motor. It's usually just an exhaust manifold gasket. Now, as far as I'm concerned, a truck doing that under 36K shouldn't, I'm talking 100,000 miles maybe. I wouldn't be okay with hearing it, but okay, maybe I need to replace it. But this is a typical thing I used to see on a lot of Rams when I was selling them, a lot of Hemi-powered Jeeps, and so on and so forth. This is going to be no different than the 6.4 Hemi having that tap. I haven't actually even heard a Ford that I've driven in that has had that issue. I'm not saying that they're immune from it, but I'm just saying that is one of the other concerns that people are having, is the early replacement of exhaust manifold gaskets. And unless you love turning wrenches and busting your knuckles inside those engine compartments, that's probably going to be a dealer thing, and it's probably going to be expensive. Then the next thing is actually the direct injection is a good and a bad thing. Again, I kind of talked about it when the drawback is the fuel is going right into the combustion chamber, and the intake just gets kind of gunked up from the EGR blowing it back around, versus the way the Ford's going to get it in there, it kind of cleans itself, if you will. And over time, again, unless you like busting knuckles, the engine will suffer performance if that doesn't stay clean. So whether you're going to use higher octane fuel or trying to use a fuel additive that might help with that, the only real way to actually get that cleaned up is to get in there yourself, versus the other one that kind of cleans itself as it goes. So again, if you have that motor and you're suffering, you have 30-40,000 miles on it, and you're starting to feel like you've lost power, that might be it. So that might be something to check. But again, the only way to get that fixed is to get in there and actually clean it out yourself. All right. The next concern is lack of power. Again, this V8 is not the most powerful V8 that's available right now. The 6.4 is more powerful. The 6.4 Hemi is more powerful. The 6.8 that's coming out is going to be more powerful, and obviously the Godzilla is more powerful. All right, so this isn't necessarily a problem, but a lot of people buy this motor and expect something that it's not. Okay, it's not a race car. It's not going to be. These trucks weigh like in excess of 7,000 and up. So I mean, this motor is not going to get it cruising. Now, the 6-speed might be a little bit of its hindrance. The Allison's going to be a welcome improvement to it, and I do believe that GM's going to have the ability to bump their horsepower and their torque numbers up with that new transmission. But only time will tell on that. So I at the end of the day, I can't say that after driving several of these with the 6-speed, it's not a dog. It's really not. It's a good solid motor. It's smooth shifting with that 6-speed. I'm not going to bang it on that. It doesn't feel as sprite as my Ford. Not at all. I haven't had an opportunity to tow with it, but just driving truck for truck straight down the road. The Chevy's going to have a 373. My truck has a 355. The Godzilla feels like it's more sprightly every day of the week. So if you're not towing all the time, that's just going to be the way it feels. Now, I've driven other 7.3s that have the higher gear in them and 1 tons and everything, and they still feel more sprightly than the 6.6 gasser from GM. Now, on the flip side of that, the Hemi feels like a race car. Every time I hop in one of those things, it feels like it wants to burn the tires off. And the Godzilla feels, very powerful, but it just feels like the Hemi's always wanting to race somewhere. But on the flip side of that, I've had 2 Hemis explode on me this summer when we rented them at work, and these were low mileage Hemis, HD trucks, and towing light loads. They both blew up. All right. So again, at the end of the day, the heavy dutiness of the Hemi, I think they need to beef it up or change it or do some stuff to make it a little bit better for me to feel confident about it. And then again, last but not least, fuel economy. This is a hot topic with everybody, and I think there was a meme or somewhere where some dude's up there saying, "Why do people lie about their fuel economy?" Okay, be realistic. Whatever you're able to get, if you have a tune on your truck or it's deleted or you can drive it better, you're running on better fuel, and you're getting 23, congratulations. If you're getting 7 and you're not happy with that, well, I'm sorry to hear that. If you're getting 10 and you're happy with it, you know what I'm saying? I mean, across the board, it really comes down to how you drive your truck, the fuel you're going to use in the truck, your rear end ratio is all going to affect your performance, your towing, and your fuel economy. Now, most big tractor trailer semis, their axle ratios are below 3. So at the end of the day, people are like, well, 355 is going to suck at towing. Well, not necessarily. It might fit right in the range where it needs to be. Now, I have videos for both the Ram, the Chevy, and the Ford on their towing specs, and you can see what rear end, and I would always say get more truck than what you need by 10 to 20%. So, if a 331 Powerstroke fits your bill and you have a little bit of leeway in there, then get the 331 because it's going to help you get better fuel economy. It's still going to pull, it doesn't detune the motor. But at the end of the day, people will say, well, it's not going to just rip up the hill. Okay, again, there are laws going up and down the I-gauntlet where you can only go about 35, 45 at the most if you're one of the big trucks reaching up there in the weight class. So keep that in mind. But the Chevy does stay true to itself. With the Duramax that I had, it didn't get great fuel economy versus my old first-gen Duramax, and with my LML got better fuel economy than the current one. Now, some people will say, well, I'm getting 22. Fantastic. The vast majority of people have told me they're getting way less than that. Okay, they're getting way less than that. And I'll agree, that's what I got, towing and just driving. The 6.6 gas is no different, okay? It got, 10, 9, 10, 12. I've never seen anything higher than that, period. Now, in my Godzilla, I've seen, up into the 17 range, just cruising down at moderate speed on the highway. That's pretty good. And then you can go back and watch my towing videos to see that, how it did on fuel economy there. All in all, I will tell you this much. Heavy-duty trucks, get out of your mindset. The fuel economy is going to be the biggest thing. But at the end of the day, the diesels, period, across the board are going to get better fuel economy than any gas. But you're going to have to equate that against the cost of the motor and the fuel itself. Now, I also did a video on that. You can check back through my posts on my videos and see I broke it down for you. Some of those you're going to have to drive for 50,000 miles, 60,000 miles with better fuel economy and gas prices being low to even equate it before you gain it. So if you don't need that power, you don't need that extra expense, then maybe it doesn't make sense for a diesel. All right. So would I buy this motor? I do like Chevys, and I do like Fords. I do like Rams. I wouldn't stay away from this except for the one thing that's really catching me up from now ordering or purchasing one, because I love the one I drove this morning. It was the green. It was great. It didn't have the pucks in it, which was a downfall, but it drove super great. I loved it, but this engine oil consumption thing bothers me. I think it's going to become an issue. And a lot of people say, well, you got a Godzilla and it has the lifter issues and stuff like that. And it can. It absolutely can. It could have these issues, but from 22 up, they believe that they've corrected the issue and that vast majority of parts has been dealt with. And people are now, unfortunately, dealing with those, but it wasn't a huge grand scheme of thing, everything like that. But they're actually saying that almost all 6.6s are going to burn oil. And if that has to do with your rings and your pistons and everything else like that, I don't know. So, put it out to you guys, 6.4 or a 6.6 gasser. I don't really want to put a diesel against my Godzilla because, come on. Okay, they're going to crush it. I mean, they're going to really crush it in the grand scheme of things, no matter what, because the load I'm pulling is still going to be the exact same. It would just be overkill for it. But, nonetheless, put it down in the comments. If you have any questions about it, I did talk to my Chevy guy this morning. One of the people that watch on the channel said the configurator to build a 24 was backup. We tried to do it at the dealer through like a consumer part of the website. It does not work yet, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But that you can go down to your local GM dealer and actually have them hand order the truck itself. But they most of the 24s that were on their way are now being held up, and I'm not for sure why. So thank you again, guys, for watching. Hopefully that breakdown of the new L8T GM 6.6 gas helps. It definitely put more clarity in my mind as to, do I want to buy a truck that uses oil already? But I did buy a Godzilla, and there was allegedly problems with that too. So it's just one of those things. So thanks for being here watching. Again, please do subscribe, hit the like button, and then we're going to see you on the next one. And also do check out the bottom of this video. In the description, you'll find a link to that service bulletin if you just want to do some read up on it or even use the oil log. We'll see you on the next one, guys.